Do you know the dangers of mitochondrial dysfunction disease? Part 2. In this part, we're going to talk about possible ways you get testing to find mitochondrial dysfunction disease and possible diets that can be affecting your mitochondria. If you don't already know, mitochondrial dysfunction disease is when the powerhouse of your cells, the mitochondria, is no longer functioning properly. If you don't have electricity powering your house, how can you see? You can't, right? You're same with your cells. If you don't have the ATP to go ahead and run your cells properly or run your body properly, then you're going to end up feeling fatigue, you have weakness, muscle cramps, neurological diseases, gastrointestinal issues, some people have vision and hearing loss, etc. So you want to make sure that your body has enough energy to function properly. And if you don't, you might possibly have mitochondrial dysfunction disease. So how would you go ahead and see if you actually have that? You can get blood tests. You can do the lactate dehydrogenase test, so LDH test, which can indicate if you have high levels of that, might be a sign of mitochondrial dysfunction. You could do a creatine kinase test, a CK test. If your CK levels are high, then you might have muscle damage, which could also show you a mitochondrial dysfunction disease. You have also the aminotransferase test. So you have elevated liver enzymes. That could also be another sign of mitochondrial dysfunction and possible liver disease. You can also have genetic issues that can lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. Mitochondria dysfunction typically comes from the mom, so all the females in your family might end up having a similar disease. You might end up having it to where you notice that a mother, she might end up being a carrier, and because the sons only get one X from mom, then they will end up having that disease as well. So you can go ahead and get genetic testing. There's a mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA analysis, which can identify mutations in mtDNA, which is associated with the disease. You can do whole exosome sequencing, which you can take the entire protein coding region of your genome to identify whether or not you have these mutations. You can do a muscle biopsy, which is going outside of realms of genetics, going into your muscles, because if you have muscle issues like muscle cramping, because you're not producing enough ATP, you can do a muscle biopsy, such as the histochemical analysis, which can reveal any abnormalities in your muscle fibers. And you can also do electron microscopy, which you can go ahead and examine your muscle fibers through that to see at the cellular level whether or not you have any mitochondrial issues. You can also do brain imaging like MRI, CT scan. You can do cardiovascular testing, ECG. That can identify abnormalities, but if you really want to go into specifics, you really need to get like a blood test or genetic sequencing. Also pay attention to the family members and see if there's any type of like links between the women in your family and certain diseases that can also indicate whether or not you have a mitochondrial dysfunction disease. Now, there are nutritional deficiencies that can cause mitochondrial dysfunction, such as vitamin B deficiency, iron deficiency, magnesium deficiency, a coenzyme Q10 deficiency, which is very important to electron transport chain. This is basically how your mitochondria is going to make the energy, right? The ATP. If you have excessive intake of high fructose corn syrup, saturated fats and trans fats, or alcohol, you could also end up causing oxidative stress to your cells and lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. Speaking of stress, chronic stress and environmental toxins can also lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. Go ahead and follow me for part 3. I don't want to be super long-winded, but for part 3, I'll go deeper into the diets that can cause mitochondrial dysfunction and what diets you should actually intake in order to try to reverse or decrease oxidative stress.